The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the typical arrogance that had defined the ruling species for over 3 millennia. Ambassador Zek Thor of the Vorthak Empire adjusted his ceremonial battle armor, the crystalline plates catching the artificial light as he prepared to address the assembly. His species had earned their position through conquest of the most hostile worlds in known space, and today he would remind everyone why they deserve their seat at the head of the council. Fellow beings of the galaxy, Zek Thor's voice resonated through the translator systems, reaching every corner of the massive chamber. We gather today to discuss the expansion protocols for Sector 7429, a region that contains some of the most challenging environments our surveyors have encountered. The chamber held representatives from dozens of species, each claiming dominion over particular types of worlds. The crystalline hive controlled the frozen methane planets, their silicon-based biology thriving in temperatures that would shatter most organic matter. The flame speakers ruled the volcanic worlds, their heat-resistant exoskeletons allowing them to walk on surfaces of molten rock. The deep dwellers commanded the crushing depths of water worlds, their pressure-adapted forms moving effortlessly through environments that would compress other beings into paste. But none commanded the respect and fear that the Vorthak Empire did. They were the undisputed masters of death worlds. The preliminary surveys have identified 17 planets in this sector that fall under our jurisdiction, Zek Thor continued, his 3 eyes scanning the assembly for any sign of challenge. High radiation levels, toxic atmospheres, predatory ecosystems, and gravitational fields that would crush lesser species. These are Vorthak worlds by right of our proven ability to not merely survive, but to thrive in such conditions. A ripple of acknowledgement passed through the chamber. The Vorthak had earned their reputation through millennia of colonizing worlds that had killed every other species that attempted settlement. Their homeworld of Keth Moran was a testament to their resilience, a planet where the very air was acidic, where storms of radioactive particles swept across continents, and where the local fauna had evolved specifically to hunt and kill anything that moved. Counselor Yish of the Aquatic Federation raised a tentacled appendage. What are the preliminary life signs detected on several of these worlds? The surveys indicated indigenous populations. Zek Thor's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his kind. Primitive life forms barely past the Stone Age level of development. Standard protocols will apply. Relocation to suitable reservation areas or integration into our workforce, depending on their adaptability. This was how the galaxy had operated for thousands of years. The strong claimed the worlds they could survive on, and the weak either served or were relocated. It was efficient, logical, and had brought unprecedented peace to the galaxy. No more wars over habitable worlds, when each species naturally gravitated toward the environments that suited their evolution. The session continued with typical bureaucratic efficiency. Trade routes were established, resource extraction rights were assigned, and colonization timelines were approved. The Vorthak would begin settlement of the death worlds within 6 standard cycles, with full terraforming operations to commence within 20 cycles. But as the council dispersed, a junior aide approached Zek Thor with unusual urgency. Kathar was young even by Vorthak standards, her exoskeleton still bearing the smooth sheen of recent molting, but her intelligence had earned her a position in the diplomatic corps. Ambassador, there's something unusual in the detailed surveys from the 3rd planet of the Kepler 442 system. The computers initially classified it as a death world due to extreme environmental variability, but the readings are inconsistent. Zek Thor paused, his interest piqued. In his experience, computers were rarely wrong about planetary classifications. Explain. Kathar activated her portable display, showing a blue-green world that rotated slowly in the holographic projection. The planet shows characteristics of multiple environmental extremes simultaneously. Frozen polar regions with temperatures below -40 degrees, desert regions with surface temperatures exceeding 50 degrees, oceanic areas with crushing depths, and atmospheric pressure variations from near vacuum at altitude to crushing density in certain geological formations. A world of multiple biomes, Zek Thor mused. Unusual, but not unprecedented. Many death worlds present such challenges. That's just it, Ambassador. The indigenous population has somehow managed to establish civilizations in every single biome. They've built settlements in the frozen wastelands, the scorching deserts, the crushing ocean depths, and even at altitudes where the atmosphere is too thin for most life forms to survive. Thor's eyes narrowed. This was highly unusual. Most primitive species were adapted to specific environmental niches. Finding one that had spread across multiple extreme environments suggested either an error in the data or something unprecedented in galactic history. "Show me their technology level," he commanded. The display shifted to show surface scans of the indigenous settlements. What Thor saw defied his understanding of primitive civilizations. The beings had constructed massive settlements that stretched across entire continents, with transportation networks that spanned their planet. More concerning were the energy signatures that suggested advanced industrial capacity. How did our initial surveys classify them as Stone Age primitives? Thor asked, his voice carrying an edge of suspicion. The scans were conducted from the outer system using standard protocols. The indigenous population appears to have developed in a way that initially masked their technological advancement. They use unusual material combinations that didn't register clearly on long-range sensors. Zektra manipulated the display to show close-up images of the beings themselves. Thor studied them with growing unease. They were bipedal, relatively small in stature compared to most galactic species, and appeared remarkably fragile. Their skin seemed thin and unprotected, they lacked natural armor or obvious environmental adaptations, and their physical build suggested they would be unable to survive in any of the extreme environments they had apparently colonized. "This makes no sense," Thor muttered. "Look at them. They appear less adapted for harsh environments than the gentle shepherds of the Garden Worlds. Yet they've somehow managed to establish themselves across environmental extremes that would challenge even us. There's more, Ambassador. The detailed scans have detected what appears to be extensive terraforming activity, but not in the way we understand it. Instead of modifying their environment to suit their biology, they appear to have developed technology that allows them to function in unmodified extreme environments." This was troubling news. Terraforming was an advanced galactic technology, typically requiring massive industrial capabilities and thousands of years of development. The idea that a supposedly primitive species had developed comparable capabilities independently was deeply unsettling. "Have they attempted any form of communication with our survey vessels?" "No direct communication, but there are indications they've detected our presence. Several of their observation posts have redirected their sensing equipment toward our survey ship positions." Thor considered this information carefully. In his 3 centuries of diplomatic experience, he had never encountered a situation quite like this. The standard protocols assumed that any species capable of surviving on death worlds would be immediately recognizable as a threat. These beings appeared utterly unsuited for such environments, yet had somehow managed to not only survive but apparently thrive. "Prepare a detailed report for the High Command," he ordered. "Include all sensor data and recommend that we proceed with extreme caution in this system. I want a full xenological assessment before any colonization attempts begin." As Cathar hurried away to compile the report, Thor remained staring at the holographic image of the strange blue world. Something about this discovery troubled him deeply. In his experience, the galaxy held few surprises. Each species had found their niche, claimed the worlds they could survive on, and settled into their role in the galactic order. But these beings challenged everything the galaxy thought it knew about the relationship between biology and environment. If they had truly mastered the ability to thrive in multiple extreme environments without significant biological adaptation, it raised uncomfortable questions about the assumptions that underpin galactic civilization. The Vorthak had built their entire identity around being the masters of death worlds. Strategic Assessment Division is being activated for priority review. As Thor transmitted the survey data, he couldn't shake the feeling that this discovery would change everything. For the first time in his long career, he was witnessing something that didn't fit neatly into the galaxy's established order. The comfortable certainty that had defined galactic civilization for millennia was suddenly feeling much less certain. The beings on this blue world had somehow accomplished what should have been impossible. They had made themselves masters of multiple extreme environments without the biological adaptations that every other species required. If they could do that, what else might they be capable of? Within hours, the priority response arrived from Vorthak High Command. The message was brief and carried the personal authorization seal of the Supreme War Leader himself. All colonization activities in Sector 7429 are hereby suspended pending comprehensive strategic assessment. Ambassador Zek Thor is directed to establish a covert observation post and maintain continuous surveillance of the blue world designated as Planet Sol 3. Under no circumstances are the indigenous population to become aware of our presence until assessment is complete. Zek Thor felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. In his 3 centuries of service, he had never seen the Supreme War Leader take personal interest in a first contact situation. The fact that they were implementing covert surveillance rather than standard introduction protocols suggested that High Command viewed these beings as a potential threat. As he began making arrangements for the extended observation mission, Zek Thor found himself studying the images of the strange bipedal beings again. They looked so fragile, so utterly unsuited for the harsh realities of galactic expansion. Yet somehow they had achieved something that no other species in recorded history had accomplished. The galaxy was about to learn that appearances could be very deceiving indeed. And somewhere on that blue world, the beings who called themselves humans were about to demonstrate why they had become the dominant species on one of the galaxy's most challenging planets. The Vorthak Empire, masters of death worlds and apex predators of hostile environments, were about to discover that they had never encountered anything quite like humanity. The galaxy's comfortable certainties were about to be shattered by a species that refused to accept the limitations that confined every other form of life. The age of human expansion was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. Commander Sarah Chun adjusted her environmental suit's cooling system as she stepped off the transport shuttle onto the scorching surface of Kepler 438b. The temperature readings on her heads-up display showed a steady 47 degrees Celsius in the shade, with surface temperatures approaching 60 in direct sunlight. For most species in the galaxy, this world would be uninhabitable without massive terraforming efforts. For the human survey team, it was Tuesday. Atmospheric composition is within expected parameters, reported Dr. James Rodriguez, the team's xenogeologist, as he calibrated his equipment. Oxygen content is slightly higher than Earth standard, which should improve efficiency once we acclimate to the heat stress. Sarah nodded, watching as the rest of her team efficiently unloaded their equipment. The Human Colonial Survey Division had been established only 50 years earlier, but they had already gained a reputation for taking on worlds that other species wouldn't even consider. Not because they were physically superior to other species, but because they had developed an almost obsessive dedication to making hostile environments work for them. Base camp establishment in Grid 7 Alpha, announced Lieutenant Tom Washington, the team's engineer. Thermal regulation systems are online, and we're already seeing efficiency improvements in shaded areas. What made humanity unique wasn't their physical capabilities, which were actually quite average by galactic standards. What set them apart was their refusal to accept environmental limitations as permanent barriers. Where other species either adapted biologically over millions of years or declared worlds uninhabitable, humans simply engineered solutions. Sarah's communicator crackled to life with a transmission from orbit. Survey Team Alpha. This is Captain Martinez aboard the exploration vessel New Horizons. Be advised that we're detecting some unusual sensor activity in the outer system. Appears to be artificial in origin. Sarah paused, her hand moving instinctively to her sidearm. The galaxy was supposed to be at peace, with each species claiming only the worlds they were naturally suited for, but first contact protocols existed for good reason. Can you identify the source, New Horizons? Negative on species identification. The technology profile doesn't match anything in our databases, but the positioning suggests long-range surveillance rather than immediate threat. Maintaining standard defensive posture. Dr. Rodriguez looked up from his equipment with interest. Surveillance. That's unusual. Most galactic species we've encountered have been quite open about their territorial claims. Maybe they're just being cautious, Sarah replied, though her instincts told her otherwise. Continue standard survey procedures, but everyone stays alert. If there's another species watching us, they might be wondering the same thing we are. Who are these new people, and what are they capable of? What the Watchers couldn't possibly understand was that humanity's expansion into hostile environments wasn't driven by desperation or natural adaptation. It was driven by curiosity, stubbornness, and an almost pathological refusal to be told that something couldn't be done. The survey team worked through the day, establishing their base camp with practiced efficiency. They deployed solar collectors optimized for the intense radiation, set up atmosphere processors to create breathable air pockets, and established communication relays that would function despite the electromagnetic interference from the planet's unusually active magnetosphere. You know what's interesting about this world? Dr. Rodriguez said as they gathered for their evening briefing. According to the geological surveys, this planet has been stable in its current configuration for over 2 million years. The temperature variations, the atmospheric composition, the radiation levels, they've all remained relatively constant. And Sarah prompted, well, most death worlds that we classify as extreme environments are that way because of ongoing geological or stellar activity. This world is extreme because it's stable in an extreme configuration. It's not trying to kill you. It's just naturally hostile to most forms of life. Lieutenant Washington nodded thoughtfully. So any species that could thrive here would need to be either naturally adapted to these specific conditions or have technology advanced enough to completely circumvent environmental limitations. Exactly. And since we don't see any signs of indigenous life forms adapted to these conditions, any previous visitors would need to have technology at least as advanced as ours. Sarah felt a chill despite the oppressive heat. The implications were clear. Whoever was watching them from the outer system might be assessing human technological capabilities. And based on what they were observing, they might be reaching some very interesting conclusions. Unknown to the human survey team, their assessment was entirely correct. Aboard the Vorthack observation vessel Hidden Talon, Commander Grextar studied the human activities with growing amazement and concern. They've established a fully functional base camp in less than one planetary rotation. He reported to Ambassador Zek Thor via encrypted transmission. Their technology allows them to operate effectively in conditions that would require major life support systems for our own forces. Zek Thor's image flickered in the communication display. Explain their approach. Are they using terraforming technology? Negative, Ambassador. They're using what appears to be personal environmental adaptation technology. Instead of modifying the planet to suit their biology, they've modified their biology to suit the planet. But not permanently. They appear to be using technological enhancements that can be adjusted as needed. That's impossible. Zek Thor's voice carried a note of disbelief. Biological modification at that level requires centuries of genetic engineering and extensive testing. No species develops such capabilities without going through the standard technological progression phases. Nevertheless, that's what we're observing. Their environmental suits are far more sophisticated than anything in our databases. They're not just providing life support. They're actively enhancing their physical capabilities to match environmental demands. Commander Grextar manipulated his displays to show detailed scans of the human equipment. Look at this, Ambassador. Their tools and machinery are designed with modularity that allows rapid adaptation to different environmental conditions. They're not carrying specialized equipment for this specific world. They're carrying generalized equipment that can be reconfigured for multiple types of environments. This observation struck Zek Thor with particular force. The Vorthack Empire's expansion strategy had always relied on their natural biological adaptations to hostile environments. They had never needed to develop the kind of flexible technological solutions that the humans appear to take for granted. How many environmental types could they theoretically operate in with this approach? Based on our analysis, potentially all of them, Ambassador. Their technology appears to be designed around the principle of universal environmental adaptation rather than specialization for specific conditions. The implications were staggering. If humanity possessed technology that could allow them to thrive in any environment, it meant they weren't limited to specific types of worlds like every other known species. They could potentially claim territory anywhere in the galaxy. But the most disturbing aspect of the observation was how effortlessly they seemed to operate in conditions that challenged even the Vorthack. The humans moved across the superheated surface with casual confidence. Their equipment functioned flawlessly despite electromagnetic interference that would disrupt most galactic standard technology, and they had established a comfortable base camp in hours rather than the days or weeks such operations typically required. Continued detailed observation, Zek Thor ordered. I want comprehensive data on their technological capabilities, their operational procedures, and any indication of their expansion intentions. This species represents something entirely new in galactic history. Back on the planet's surface, the human survey team was making discoveries that would have surprised their watchers even more. Dr. Rodriguez had detected unusual mineral formations that suggested the planet had once hosted industrial activity. These crystalline structures aren't natural, he announced, displaying his analysis on the team's main screen. The molecular arrangements show clear evidence of technological processing. Someone was mining here, probably several thousand years ago. Sarah studied the data with interest. Any indication of what they were mining? Based on the residual traces, I'd say they were extracting rare elements used in advanced electronics and energy storage systems. Whoever was here had technology at least equivalent to our current galactic standard. And they left because that's the interesting part. There's no evidence of ecological collapse, resource depletion, or conflict. The industrial sites just appear to have been abandoned suddenly and completely. Lieutenant Washington looked up from his engineering console. What if they didn't leave? What if they're still here, just watching to see what we do? The thought sent a chill through the team. The possibility that their mysterious observers weren't just fellow explorers, but former inhabitants of this world, added an entirely new dimension to their situation. If that's the case, Sarah said slowly, then they're probably wondering how we're managing to operate so effectively in an environment that they may have found challenging enough to eventually abandon. Or, Dr. Rodriguez added grimly, they're wondering if we represent a threat to whatever brought them back to monitor this world. Unknown to any of them, both assessments were partially correct. The Vorthack Empire had indeed claimed this world centuries earlier, but had found the operational costs of maintaining a presence here to be prohibitively high. Even with their natural adaptations to hostile environments, the combination of extreme heat, electromagnetic interference, and toxic mineral deposits had made the world marginally profitable at best. They had maintained automated monitoring stations to track any changes in the world's status, which had detected the human arrival and triggered an immediate investigation. What they were observing now was challenging every assumption they had about the relationship between biology, technology, and environmental mastery. As the human survey team continued their work, they methodically cataloged resources, established permanent monitoring stations, and began preliminary assessments for potential colonization sites. Their efficiency and confidence in the hostile environment sent clear signals to their observers that this species viewed such worlds not as challenges to be overcome, but as opportunities to be exploited. The galaxy's balance of power was about to shift dramatically. For the first time in galactic history, a species had appeared that could potentially challenge the environmental specialization that had defined territorial boundaries for millennia. The comfortable certainty that each species would remain within their naturally suited domains was about to be shattered by a species that refused to accept natural limitations. The Vorthack Empire, which had built its identity and political power on being the undisputed masters of hostile environments, was watching their competitive advantage evaporate before their eyes. These humans weren't just surviving in death world conditions. They were thriving in them with a casual competence that suggested they could adapt to virtually any environment the galaxy might offer. The implications would soon become clear to the entire galactic community. The age of environmental specialization was ending, and the age of human expansion was about to begin. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened with unprecedented urgency. Ambassador Zek Thor had never seen the Great Chamber filled with such tension. Representatives from dozens of species murmuring anxiously as they reviewed the intelligence reports that had been circulating for the past several cycles. High Chancellor Vexheim of the Ethereal Collective called the session to order, his translucent form shimmering with barely contained agitation. Fellow representatives, we face a situation without precedent in galactic history. The species known as humans have now established successful operations on 47 worlds previously classified as uninhabitable by all known civilizations. The number sent a ripple of shock through the assembly. 47 worlds. In less than 20 standard cycles since their first detection, this unknown species had claimed and colonized more hostile environments than most civilizations managed in centuries of expansion. Respected Chancellor, interrupted Councillor Thran of the Gas Giant Federation, surely there's been some error in classification. No single species could possibly adapt to such diverse environmental extremes without extensive biological modification programs spanning millennia. Zek Thor activated his speaking privilege, his mechanical voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. Honored colleagues, I have personally overseen the surveillance operations monitoring human activities. There has been no error. These beings have demonstrated the ability to establish thriving colonies in environments ranging from ice worlds with surface temperatures below -60 degrees to volcanic worlds where the atmospheric pressure would crush most spacecraft. He gestured, and holographic displays materialized above the assembly, showing human settlements across a variety of hostile worlds. The images were undeniable: sprawling industrial complexes and toxic wastelands, underwater cities in crushing oceanic depths, and atmospheric platforms floating in the poison clouds of gas giants. But how? Demanded Representative Kixera of the Desert Walker Alliance. Our analysis of their biology shows them to be remarkably fragile by galactic standards. They lack natural armor. Their atmospheric requirements are quite specific, and their temperature tolerance appears extremely limited. That is precisely what makes them so dangerous, Zekthor replied grimly. They have achieved universal environmental adaptation through technological means alone. They don't modify worlds to suit their biology. They modify their biology to suit any world. The implications hung heavy in the chamber. Every species in the galaxy had evolved to dominate specific environmental niches. The crystalline hive ruled frozen worlds. The flame speakers commanded volcanic systems. The deep dwellers controlled oceanic planets. And the Vorthak Empire had claimed the most hostile death worlds. This specialization had maintained galactic peace for millennia, ensuring that territorial conflicts were rare since each species naturally gravitated toward different types of worlds. But humans threatened to upend this entire system. If they could adapt to any environment, they could potentially challenge every species' territorial claims. High Chancellor Vexheim's form flickered with increased agitation. What are their apparent expansion intentions? Have they made any territorial demands or indicated aggressive purposes? That's the most troubling aspect of the situation, Zekthor admitted. They appear to have no awareness of galactic civilization at all. They're expanding as if the galaxy is completely uninhabited, claiming worlds without any attempt to contact existing authorities or negotiate territorial agreements. This revelation caused an uproar in the chamber. Species representatives rose to their feet, tentacles, and various appendages, voices rising in multiple languages as the translation system struggled to keep pace. Order! Order! Chancellor Vexheim commanded, his ethereal form pulsing with authority. Are you suggesting that this species is conducting blind expansion without any knowledge of our existence? Precisely, Chancellor. Our surveillance suggests they believe they are alone in the galaxy. They have detected our observation posts on several occasions, but they appear to interpret these as naturally occurring phenomena or possibly automated systems from some vanished civilization. Representative Molth of the Silicon Collective interjected. Then, perhaps the solution is simple. We make contact, explain galactic law and territorial agreements, and negotiate their integration into existing systems. I advise extreme caution with that approach, Zekthor replied. Our analysis suggests that their technological capabilities may be significantly more advanced than initial assessments indicated. Any species that can achieve universal environmental adaptation has implications beyond simple colonization technology. To demonstrate his point, Zekthor activated additional displays showing human activities in greater detail. The assembly watched in fascination and growing alarm as the humans demonstrated capabilities that challenged fundamental assumptions about the relationship between technology and environment. Observe their approach to hostile environment operations, Zekthor narrated. Where most species require massive infrastructure and extensive support systems, they operate with individual mobility and adaptability that allows rapid response to changing conditions. The displays showed human exploration teams moving effortlessly between different environmental zones on the same world, their equipment and personal systems automatically adjusting to each new challenge. They traversed boiling lakes, walked through radioactive storms, and established temporary shelters in areas where most species would require permanent protective installations. But most concerning is their approach to resource extraction and utilization, Zekthor continued. They don't just survive in hostile environments, they thrive in them. Their industrial output from worlds we consider marginally habitable exceeds the productivity of most species on their ideal worlds. Counselor Yish of the Aquatic Federation raised a tentacled appendage. What are the implications for existing territorial claims? If they continue expanding at their current rate, they will inevitably encounter worlds already claimed by member species. Based on their expansion vectors and speed of colonization, first contact with existing settlements is inevitable within the next 5 to 10 cycles, Zek Thor confirmed. And given their apparent ignorance of galactic civilization, they may not recognize or respect existing territorial claims. The chamber fell into an uneasy silence as representatives contemplated this possibility. For millennia, first contact with new species had followed predictable patterns. New civilizations were typically far behind galactic standard technology, grateful for integration into galactic society, and easily assigned to appropriate environmental niches. But humans represented something entirely different. They possessed technology that potentially surpassed galactic standards in key areas, showed no awareness of galactic authority, and refused to be confined to specific environmental niches. High Chancellor Vexheim consulted his advisory council before addressing the assembly. Given the unprecedented nature of this situation, I'm establishing a special committee to develop first contact protocols specifically for dealing with the human species. Ambassador Zek Thor, given your extensive surveillance experience, you will lead this committee. Honored Chancellor, I recommend extreme caution in any first contact attempts. Our observations suggest that humans may interpret any approach as either a threat or an opportunity to be exploited. Their response patterns don't match any known diplomatic frameworks. Explain. When they encounter obstacles, they don't negotiate around them or retreat to find alternative approaches. They engineer solutions that eliminate the obstacles entirely. When they discovered electromagnetic interference disrupting their communications on Kepler 442c, they didn't relocate their operations to areas with less interference. They developed new communication technology that functions more effectively in high-interference environments than our standard systems work in normal space. And you believe they would apply this same approach to encountering galactic civilization? I believe they would view galactic territorial agreements as obstacles to be engineered around rather than authorities to be respected. This assessment sent another wave of unease through the assembly. The galactic order had been built on mutual respect for each species' environmental specializations. If humans refuse to accept these limitations, the entire foundation of galactic civilization could be threatened. Representative Kixera stood to address the assembly. Perhaps we're approaching this incorrectly. Instead of viewing them as a threat to existing order, we should consider what benefits their capabilities might offer to galactic civilization. Universal environmental adaptation could open possibilities for development and expansion that we've never considered. That assumes they would be willing to share their technology rather than using it to dominate territories that we currently control, countered Councillor Thran. A species that can thrive anywhere can potentially challenge everyone. Zek Thor found himself in the uncomfortable position of agreeing with both assessments. Human technological capabilities could indeed offer unprecedented opportunities for galactic development. But those same capabilities posed an existential threat to the environmental specialization that had defined galactic politics for millennia. There is another factor that must be considered, he added reluctantly. Our behavioral analysis suggests that humans are not content with mere survival or modest expansion. They appear to be driven by curiosity and ambition that compels them to continuously push beyond their current capabilities. They don't colonize worlds. They transform them into platforms for further expansion. This observation struck at the heart of what made humans so unsettling to observe. Most galactic species expanded until they reached their optimal territorial holdings, then settled into stable, sustainable patterns of development. But humans seem to view each successful colony as a stepping stone to greater challenges rather than an end goal in itself. What do our xenopsychology experts conclude about their motivations? Chancellor Vexheim inquirit. That's perhaps the most disturbing aspect of our analysis. Their motivations don't appear to be driven by resource scarcity, population pressure, or territorial competition. They expand because they can. They colonize hostile worlds because those worlds exist. They develop new technologies because they encounter problems that their current technologies can't solve. You're describing a species driven by curiosity rather than necessity, observed Representative Molth. Precisely. And that makes their behavior completely unpredictable by our standards. We can't negotiate with them based on resource sharing or territorial division because those aren't their primary motivations. They want to explore, to understand, and to overcome challenges for the intrinsic satisfaction of doing so. The Assembly absorbed this information with growing concern. Dealing with species motivated by resource competition or territorial expansion was well understood. But how did one negotiate with beings who were driven by intellectual curiosity and the desire to push beyond existing limitations? High Chancellor Vexheim called for a brief recess to allow representatives to consult with their governments. As the assembly dispersed, small groups formed to discuss the implications of this revelation. Zekthor found himself approached by Representative Molth, whose silicon-based physiology allowed for rapid processing of complex scenarios. Ambassador, in your assessment, is peaceful coexistence with humans possible under existing galactic frameworks? Zekthor considered the question carefully. I believe peaceful coexistence is possible, but not under existing frameworks. Humans fundamentally challenge the assumptions upon which galactic civilization is built. Any sustainable relationship with them will require us to adapt our approaches as radically as they adapt to hostile environments. And if we refuse to adapt, then we will discover whether our specialization in specific environmental niches is an advantage or a limitation when facing a species that recognizes no environmental boundaries. The implications were clear to both representatives. The galaxy was about to face its first truly unpredictable first contact situation in recorded history, and the outcome would determine whether the existing order could survive an encounter with beings who refused to accept the limitations that defined everyone else's existence. Captain Elena Rodriguez received the priority communication while overseeing the establishment of humanity's newest deep space research station in the Proxima Centauri system. The message carried the highest security classification and came directly from Earth's Colonial Administration Authority. Captain Rodriguez, you are to immediately establish contact with an unknown alien vessel that has been detected approaching your position. Initial scans suggest the vessel is conducting reconnaissance operations and has been observing human activities for an extended period. Elena felt a surge of excitement, mixed with professional caution. Humanity had been expanding into space for decades, always wondering when they would encounter other intelligent life. The fact that their first contact was happening at one of their most remote research stations added both opportunity and risk to the situation. Dr. Sarah Kim, report to the command center immediately, Elena announced over the station's communication system. As humanity's leading xenobiologist, Dr. Kim had been assigned to this remote station specifically because of the possibility that first contact might occur in the outer systems where human expansion was pushing into unexplored territories. Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures approaching from the Orc cloud region, reported Lieutenant Commander Marcus Chun from the sensor station. The vessel is approximately 3 kilometers in length and shows technological capabilities significantly beyond our current standards. Elena nodded grimly. Humanity's expansion had been driven by the assumption that they might not be alone in the universe, and all deep space installations included first contact protocols. But actually implementing those protocols was another matter entirely. Dr. Kim, what's our assessment of their technological level? Dr. Kim reviewed the sensor data with practiced efficiency. Based on their propulsion signatures and energy output, I'd estimate their technology is several centuries ahead of ours in terms of raw capability. But their approach patterns suggest caution rather than aggression. Open a communication channel using standard mathematical progressions, Elena ordered. Let's see if we can establish basic communication. The response was immediate and startling. Instead of mathematical sequences, the alien vessel transmitted a complex linguistic package that seemed designed to facilitate rapid translation. Within minutes, Dr. Kim's computers had decoded enough of the transmission to enable basic communication. Captain Rodriguez of the Human Research Station Endeavor. This is Ambassador Zekthor of the Vorthak Empire, representing the Galactic Council. We request permission to board your station for formal first contact protocols. Elena exchanged glances with Dr. Kim. The implications were staggering. Not only were humans not alone in the universe, but there was apparently an entire galactic civilization with formal diplomatic structures. Ambassador Zekthor, on behalf of humanity, I welcome you to our space. Permission granted for diplomatic boarding. Please be advised that this is humanity's first contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. We are aware of your species' isolation, Captain Rodriguez. That is precisely why this meeting has become necessary. Within hours, the alien delegation had arrived aboard the research station. Elena found herself face-to-face with beings that challenged every assumption humanity had made about what alien intelligence might look like. Ambassador Zek Thor stood nearly 3 meters tall, his crystalline exoskeleton gleaming under the station's lighting, while his companion Kathar appeared to be a younger member of the same species. Captain Rodriguez, Dr. Kim, we come bearing information that will significantly impact humanity's understanding of their place in the galaxy. Zek Thor began, his mechanically translated voice carrying undertones that suggested both respect and wariness. We're eager to learn, Ambassador, Elena replied, activating the station's recording systems to ensure that this historic moment was properly documented. The galaxy contains thousands of intelligent species, organized under the Galactic Council into a civilization spanning tens of thousands of star systems. Each species has claimed territorial domains based on their natural environmental adaptations and technological specializations. Dr. Kim leaned forward with obvious fascination. You mean the galaxy is already fully colonized? Not fully colonized, but organized under territorial agreements that have maintained peace for over 3 millennia, Kathar interjected. Each species controls worlds suited to their natural biology and technological capabilities. Elena felt a sinking sensation. And where does humanity fit into this organization? Zek Thor's mandibles clicked in what Elena was learning to recognize as a sign of discomfort. That is the challenge we face, Captain Rodriguez. Your species does not fit into existing territorial frameworks. I don't understand. Surely there must be worlds suitable for human habitation that aren't already claimed. The issue is not finding worlds suitable for human habitation, Zek Thor explained. The issue is that humans appear to be suitable for habitation of virtually any world. The implications hit Elena like a physical blow. You mean we're competing with other species for the same territories? More than competing, Captain. You are demonstrating capabilities that challenge the fundamental assumptions upon which galactic civilization is built. Most species can only thrive in specific environmental niches. Humans appear to have developed technology that allows them to thrive in virtually any environment. Dr. Kim's scientific excitement overcame her diplomatic caution. That's fascinating. What types of environmental specializations do different species have? Zek Thor activated a holographic display showing the galactic map with territorial divisions clearly marked. My own species, the Vorthak, control what are classified as death worlds, planets with extreme environmental challenges that would be hostile to most life forms. The crystalline hive controls frozen methane worlds. The flame speakers rule volcanic systems. The deep dwellers command oceanic planets. Elena studied the map with growing understanding. And you're saying that humans could potentially operate in any of these environments? Not potentially, Captain. You already are. Our surveillance has documented human colonies operating successfully in environments that each of these species considers their exclusive domain. The weight of this revelation settled on Elena gradually. Humanity had been expanding into space with the assumption that they would find empty worlds to colonize. Instead, they had been unknowingly encroaching on territories that other species considered rightfully theirs. Ambassador, I need to understand the implications clearly. Is humanity's expansion threatening established territorial claims? Yes and no, Captain. You're not directly threatening existing colonies, but you are demonstrating that environmental specialization may not be the permanent advantage that galactic civilization has assumed. Kathar added, more specifically, your presence suggests that technological adaptation can overcome biological limitations in ways that we had not previously considered possible. Elena felt the weight of representing her entire species in this moment. What does the Galactic Council want from humanity? That is the question that has been debated for many cycles, Zek Thor admitted. Some species view humanity as a potential threat to be contained. Others see opportunities for beneficial cooperation. But all agree that your expansion cannot continue without formal recognition and integration into galactic frameworks. And what would that integration look like? Traditional integration would involve assigning humanity to specific environmental niches and territorial boundaries, Zek Thor explained. But humanity's universal environmental adaptation capabilities make traditional territorial assignments problematic. Dr. Kim had been studying the galactic map intently. Ambassador, I'm noticing that there are vast regions of space marked as unexplored or uninhabitable. What prevents expansion into those areas? Those regions contain worlds that are too extreme even for the most specialized species, Kathar replied. Worlds with conditions so hostile that the cost of establishing and maintaining colonies exceeds any possible benefits. Elena felt a spark of recognition. This was exactly the kind of challenge that would attract human attention rather than deter it. And you believe humans might be able to operate effectively in such environments? Based on our observations of human capabilities, we believe humans might be the only species capable of making such environments productive, Thor confirmed. Elena exchanged glances with Dr. Kim, both recognizing the opportunity this presented. Instead of competing with established species for their traditional territories, humanity might be able to claim regions that no other species could effectively utilize. Ambassador, what would be required for humanity to gain formal recognition in the Galactic Council? Demonstration of technological capabilities, establishment of diplomatic relations, and acceptance of galactic law and territorial agreements, Thor replied. But given humanity's unique capabilities, new frameworks may need to be developed. Elena made a decision that would affect the future of human expansion. Ambassador, I'm prepared to recommend to my government that humanity enter into formal negotiations for integration into galactic civilization. But I want to be clear about humanity's position. We're willing to respect existing territorial claims, but we're not willing to accept artificial limitations on our expansion capabilities. Thor's exoskeleton clicked with what Elena was learning to interpret as approval. That position is both realistic and potentially beneficial to all parties. Humanity's capabilities could open development possibilities that no other species could achieve. There is another factor to consider, Kathar added. Humanity's expansion has been observed by multiple species, and not all reactions have been positive. Some view your capabilities as a threat that should be contained or eliminated rather than integrated. Elena felt a chill. Are you saying that some species might consider military action against humanity? The possibility cannot be ruled out, Thor admitted, which is why formal integration into galactic frameworks would provide protection as well as opportunities. Galactic law provides mechanisms for resolving territorial disputes without military conflict. But only if all parties accept galactic authority, Elena observed. Precisely. Humanity's isolation has provided protection through ignorance, but continued expansion will inevitably lead to direct contact with species that may not be as diplomatically inclined as the Vorthak Empire. Elena realized that humanity faced a crossroads. They could continue expanding in isolation, potentially triggering conflicts with unknown alien civilizations, or they could accept integration into a galactic community that might limit their expansion, but would provide protection and opportunities for cooperation. Ambassador, I need to consult with my government about these revelations. How much time do we have before humanity's expansion creates unavoidable conflicts? Based on your current expansion vectors, first contact with territorial boundaries is inevitable within the next 5 to 10 standard years, Thor replied. Formal integration negotiations should begin as soon as possible. As the meeting concluded, Elena found herself grappling with the reality that humanity was no longer alone in the universe. More than that, they were part of a complex galactic civilization that they would need to navigate carefully to avoid conflicts that could threaten their very survival. But she also recognized the tremendous opportunities that lay ahead. If humans could indeed operate effectively in environments that other species found impossible, they might be able to claim vast regions of space that had been considered worthless. The key would be convincing the galactic community that human expansion was an opportunity rather than a threat. The age of human isolation was ending, but the age of human integration into galactic civilization was just beginning. 2 years after first contact, the Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council had been reconfigured to accommodate its newest member species. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, now serving as humanity's first galactic ambassador, stood before the assembled representatives as she prepared to present the proposal that would reshape galactic civilization. The months of negotiation had been challenging for all parties involved. Humanity's integration into galactic society had required the development of entirely new diplomatic frameworks. While the existing member species had been forced to confront assumptions about environmental limitations that had defined their worldview for millennia. Honored representatives, Elena began, her words translated simultaneously into dozens of languages. I stand before you today to propose the Extreme Environment Development Initiative, a collaborative program that will open vast new territories for galactic expansion. The proposal displayed on the chamber's holographic systems showed star charts highlighting thousands of worlds previously classified as uninhabitable. These were worlds that existed in the spaces between traditional territorial claims, planets too hostile for any single species to colonize effectively, but potentially productive under the right circumstances. High Chancellor Vexheim's ethereal form shimmered with interest. Ambassador Rodriguez, please elaborate on humanity's assessment of these extreme environments. Honored Chancellor, our preliminary surveys have identified over 3,000 worlds in this category. These include planets with extreme temperature variations that would challenge multiple species simultaneously, worlds with atmospheric compositions that require constant technological adaptation, and systems with radiation levels or gravitational anomalies that make long-term settlement extraordinarily difficult. Ambassador Zek Thor, now serving as the liaison between humanity and the established galactic order, activated his speaking privilege. The Vorthak Empire has conducted extensive analysis of these proposals in cooperation with human technical teams. We can confirm that many of these worlds contain resources that would be valuable to galactic civilization if they could be accessed safely. Elena smiled, remembering the partnership that had developed between humanity and the Vorthak over the past 2 years. Initially suspicious of each other, the two species had discovered that their approaches to hostile environments were complementary rather than competitive. Vorthak natural adaptations, combined with human technological flexibility, had proven remarkably effective. The key innovation in our proposal, Elena continued, is the concept of joint environmental adaptation. Instead of each species attempting to master every environment individually, we propose collaborative colonies where different species contribute their specialized capabilities to overcome environmental challenges that would defeat any single species. Counselor Yish of the Aquatic Federation raised a tentacled appendage. Can you provide specific examples of how such collaboration would function? Elena activated a detailed display showing the first successful joint colony on Kepler, 438c, the same world where humanity had first been observed by Vorthak surveillance teams. The initial human survey team established basic operations, but full development required expertise that humans alone couldn't provide. The crystalline hive contributed ice processing technology for the polar regions. The flame speakers provided volcanic energy extraction systems, and the Vorthak Empire offered radiation shielding expertise. The display showed a thriving industrial complex that spanned multiple environmental zones, with different species working in the areas where their capabilities were most effective. It was a sight unprecedented in galactic history. Multiple species cooperating on the same world to overcome challenges that would have been impossible for any of them individually. The result is a colony that produces rare elements and energy at levels that exceed the output of most single-species worlds, Elena concluded. But more importantly, it demonstrates that collaboration can overcome environmental limitations that we previously accepted as absolute barriers. Representative Molth of the Silicon Collective processed this information with characteristic analytical efficiency. The implications extend beyond simple resource extraction. This model suggests that environmental specialization may be a chosen limitation rather than a biological necessity. Precisely, Representative Molth. Humanity's integration into galactic civilization has revealed that many environmental barriers can be overcome through technological cooperation and innovative approaches to colony development. But not all reactions in the chamber were positive. Counselor Drac of the Territorial Purist faction had been vocal in their opposition to humanity's integration from the beginning. Ambassador Rodriguez, your species continues to challenge established galactic order. These collaborative colonies undermine the territorial integrity that has maintained peace for millennia. Elena had expected this objection and was prepared with a response that had been developed through extensive consultation with moderate faction representatives. Counselor Drac, our proposal actually strengthens territorial integrity by opening new regions for expansion rather than competing for existing territories. Species that participate in extreme environment development gain access to resources and expansion opportunities without encroaching on established claims. But at the cost of abandoning the environmental specializations that define our civilizations, Drac countered. With respect, Counselor, we're not proposing that species abandon their specializations. We're proposing that they use those specializations cooperatively to achieve goals that none could accomplish alone. Zekthor supported Elena's position with data from the joint colonies. The Vorthak Empire has found that our environmental adaptations are actually more valuable in collaborative settings than in isolated development. Our capabilities complement rather than compete with other species' specializations. High Chancellor Vexheim called for formal discussion among the faction leaders. Elena waited as representatives consulted among themselves, knowing that humanity's future in galactic civilization depended on the outcome of this debate. Dr. Kim, attending as part of the human delegation, approached Elena during the recess. How do you think they're responding to the proposal? Better than I expected. Honestly, Elena replied. The collaborative colonies have demonstrated concrete benefits that are hard to argue against. But there's still significant concern about the long-term implications of changing the fundamental structure of galactic civilization. Do you think the territorial purists will try to block the initiative? They'll try, but they don't have enough support. The moderate factions have seen the economic benefits of collaboration, and the resource data from the extreme environment worlds is too compelling to ignore. As the formal discussion period concluded, Elena observed the complex political dynamics that govern galactic civilization. Unlike human political systems, which often focused on ideological competition, galactic politics appeared to be driven primarily by practical concerns about resource allocation and territorial security. High Chancellor Vexheim reconvened the session with an announcement that would reshape galactic development for generations to come. The Council has reached a preliminary consensus on the Extreme Environment Development Initiative. The proposal will be approved with the following modifications. Elena felt a surge of relief mixed with anticipation as the Chancellor outlined the approved framework. First, participation in extreme environment development will be voluntary for all member species. No species will be required to abandon their traditional territorial claims or environmental specializations. Second, all extreme environment colonies will be governed under special joint administration protocols, with representation proportional to each species' contribution to the colony's development and operation. Third, humanity will be granted formal territorial claims to worlds that no other species can effectively colonize independently, in recognition of their unique universal environmental adaptation capabilities. Elena could hardly believe what she was hearing. Not only had the initiative been approved, but humanity had been granted the right to claim territories that had previously been considered worthless. The galaxy's most hostile and challenging worlds would become humanity's sovereign territory. Fourth, the Council establishes the Extreme Environment Development Authority to be jointly administered by humanity and participating member species, with authority to coordinate expansion into previously inaccessible regions of galactic space. The implications were staggering. Humanity had not only been accepted into galactic civilization, but had been granted a unique role in expanding that civilization into regions that had been considered forever beyond reach. Finally, the Chancellor concluded, the Council formally recognizes that environmental adaptation through technological means is equivalent to environmental adaptation through biological evolution for purposes of territorial claims and galactic law. This final point was perhaps the most significant of all. It meant that humanity's technological approach to environmental challenges was legally and politically equal to other species' biological adaptations. The galaxy had officially recognized that there was more than one path to environmental mastery. As the session concluded, Elena found herself surrounded by representatives from dozens of species, all eager to discuss potential collaboration opportunities. The galaxy that had seemed so vast and intimidating 2 years earlier now appeared full of possibilities for cooperation and mutual benefit. Ambassador Zekthor approached as the crowd began to disperse. Ambassador Rodriguez, the Vorthak Empire wishes to propose a joint expedition to the Magellan Clouds. Our analysis suggests that galaxy contains extreme environment worlds that could prove extraordinarily valuable if developed collaboratively. Elena smiled at the proposal. The idea of humanity working alongside the Vorthack to explore entirely new galaxies was both thrilling and somewhat overwhelming. Ambassador Zek Thor, humanity would be honored to participate in such an expedition. As they discussed preliminary plans for intergalactic exploration, Elena reflected on how dramatically the situation had changed. What had begun as a potential conflict between humanity's expansion and established galactic order had evolved into a partnership that was opening unprecedented opportunities for all species involved. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy's deadliest worlds through superior strength or advanced technology alone. They had succeeded by demonstrating that environmental limitations were challenges to be overcome rather than absolute barriers to be accepted. More importantly, they had shown that cooperation could achieve what competition never could. The galaxy had learned that there was room for everyone to thrive if they were willing to work together to overcome the challenges that had previously seemed insurmountable. The age of environmental specialization was giving way to an age of collaborative expansion, and the universe had suddenly become a much larger and more welcoming place. As Elena prepared for the journey back to Earth to report on humanity's successful integration into galactic civilization, she carried with her the knowledge that this was just the beginning. The extreme environment worlds that humanity would help develop were scattered throughout the galaxy, and beyond that lay entire galaxies waiting to be explored. Humanity had proven that they could thrive in the galaxy's deadliest environments. Now they would help the entire galactic community discover what lay beyond those environments, in the vast, unexplored regions that have been waiting for beings brave enough and cooperative enough to claim them. The galaxy's deadliest worlds had become humanity's greatest opportunity, and that opportunity was about to be shared with all who were willing to push beyond their previous limitations and explore the infinite possibilities that awaited in the cosmos.